So the last thing we'll wrap up with this, the players that we've lost excitement for, guys that we were all excited about a couple weeks ago. Really, this has to do with injuries, and I mentioned it at the top, hamstring injuries. Oh, I hate to hear about the hamstrings. And here's where I'm torn too as a fantasy manager. You mentioned not looking too much into preseason. All of this information this time of year, we're trying to factor it in. We're putting it through the lens. We're trying to figure out, all right, what's true? What do we cling to? All that kind of thing. Well, injuries right before the draft. Like I'm drafting this weekend for my big league. And some of this latest news with injuries, it's like on my mind. And so you just subconsciously or maybe consciously, you start crossing guys off. You're like, he's injured. But some of these injuries are just preseason injuries, and they'll be fine. They'll be back. They're ready to go. They'll be week one. And so if you can actually get some of these guys for value, you're in good shape. But here are the players that I'm concerned about. Jahmyr Gibbs, hamstring. Even Laporta, hamstring. Rashid Shaheed, I'm starting to sour on him a little bit. And then Hollywood Brown with a nasty shoulder injury. So that's concerning. I'm not real high on Malik Neighbors just because the Giants, but he's another injury that you're sort of, you're like, oh gosh, the excitement is wavering there. So to me, guys that have hamstring injuries, they linger all season long. Like I actually love when a guy just breaks his leg and he's back in 6 weeks because it just heals up, whatever the injury is. Maybe that's a little early for a broken leg, but when you know it's broken and it's fixed and you're good. The hamstring, it never heals until you stop. You stop. Yeah. So those are the guys that I
agree with you. And in general, if the guy has that little Q next to his name when you're drafting, it doesn't feel good.
No.
And generally I shy away from it. You can get a discount every once in a while, but they can also just carry those injuries with them for the rest of the season. Two that come to mind for me that are not injury related, trying to think of some non-injury related guys. One of them, I guess he was injured early on, but a guy that I just will not have on any of my teams is Kyren Williams.
Yes, me neither.
That one, he was amazing last year. And that one, especially if you've got that sort of emotional baggage of like having found him on waivers or taken him with your last pick in the draft, and then he absolutely exploded. You feel really good about Kyren. I'm not going to have him on any of my teams. I think Blake Corum is going to get more carries out of the gate than we think that he's going to with the Rams. The other one, maybe this is a little bit of a hot take. I'm worried about the whole Brandon Aiyuk situation. I like Brandon Aiyuk. I don't like the way that he has handled this whole contract situation through the offseason. They have a lot of good skill players there. I think that Brandon Aiyuk can still be like a really good, serviceable, real-life NFL wide receiver. And it can be a rough season for him fantasy-wise for where you're drafting. Weirdly, it seems like what has happened is because of all of this publicity that he's gotten through the offseason, people are actually paying attention to him more, and it seems like he's rising up draft boards a little bit. And I just don't think as like the wide receiver 13 or wherever he's going right now that I'm going to have Brandon Aiyuk on my team anywhere. He can make me look really stupid for that take, but the whole situation has just made me nervous about him in San Francisco.
I was a huge Aiyuk guy last year, so I was all in on him. So I'm hesitant to pull the trigger on drafting him this year for sure, because I just don't like the uncertainty with players. Fantasy is all about uncertainty, and so no matter who you take, there's uncertainty. When there is added extra uncertainty, I usually avoid it. And so let's think about last year going into drafts: Cooper Kupp, Jonathan Taylor, and there was one other guy that had a lot of uncertainty, Alvin Kamara. I avoided all three of those guys. Now, in some ways, maybe I missed out, but to start the year, those guys they weren't great. Well, when did Kamara start doing well? Kamara later on, yeah. But anyway, those guys is like if there are Rashee Rice. I don't need that uncertainty with the Chiefs. I'm not dealing with that. No, thank you. So Aiyuk falls into that for me, where it's just like I don't know. He hasn't been locked in. I got to have guys locked in.
He's not locked in. There's something to be said for low stress fantasy football management. Just the guys where you just don't have to worry every week. Is he getting suspended?
Yeah.
Is he getting hurt again?
Traded?
Yeah. So I'm with you. I don't think that you felt bad about passing up on any of those guys last year. And in general, I'm avoiding that little red Q in my drafts as much as possible. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I will say, if Aiyuk goes to Pittsburgh, I think that's a huge win for them. And I would not be concerned about George Pickens if that's the case. I think both of them would complement each other because I saw some, oh, now George Pickens. No. I think Pickens is good either way. Whether Aiyuk's there, then he plays a nice compliment. I think that raises the whole offense. And if Pickens is the only guy there, he's just going to have a ton of volume.
Yeah.
He might not get as many touchdowns because I'm not sure they will move the ball quite as well as if they had a true number 2 or number 1 in that case receiver. So
yeah, fully agree. Yep.
One last guy, speaking of the Steelers, that I'm waffling on a little bit. So I was real hot and heavy for Jalen Warren, pounding the table for Jalen Warren. But now the more that I think about Arthur Smith and the committee, and I don't know if I can trust him fully. So for those that have been listening throughout the summer, I love Jalen Warren. I think he's the more talented back between him and Harris, but I'm just not sure he gets the volume enough.
I get that. If you think in your heart of hearts that Arthur Smith's main goal is to ruin seasons for fantasy football players, then you got to be worried about him. If you think that he loves to ruin RB1s to the benefit of RB2s, then I think maybe there's an argument for Warren. So I don't know where I stand on him. I like him so much, but I see the point you're making, and it does make me a little nervous, that whole situation.
I know, a little uncertainty there.